Incremental routines. In quite a few videos of mine, I said, hey, one memory, one action principle, but I never covered this in a full-fledged video in detail. Now it's the time. It's never too late. Here I have the incremental reading manual. By the way, this is the advanced level, because before they had two versions. Incremental learning, what you will see today for the newer versions, and the more advanced level. This is the last time. This is the Supermemo 16, and was the last time that they included this. One action, one memory. Sorry, one memory, one action. The other is important, by the way. So let's dive into this, but I will go slightly meta, and I will be using Supermemo for this. The almighty Internet Explorer. I'm not going to let it die. Not just yet. Okay. So I will be reading this and adding my 2 cents. In incremental reading, you achieve the highest efficiency if you progress knowledge in small steps, spared in time, in a different, more worthy way to say incrementally, gradually. This way, incrementally, if you do it incrementally, you can accomplish a good memory effect at a very little processing effort. Yes, it's a lot cheaper to have the same knowledge. That means that you can have the same knowledge, but having done a lot less effort overall in the long term. However, many users fall into traps of inefficiency where too little or too much effort is done on a subject in a single review. Yes, review before, so well, in Supermemo, you have topics and items. When you click on Learn, next repetition. Repetition is for items. Review is for topics. I will simplify and say repetition for anything, regardless of the element type, because at the end of the day, this difference is just qualitative. Then the issue is that users spend way too much. Like for instance, one of the videos I reacted to, some users spend a ton of time and they did a lot of actions in one single repetition or review, or nothing is done. But oh yeah, I don't want to see this now, click on next and move on. This is what is called futile review. So to go slightly meta, I already did this. So I have read this and I will make an extract. Making an extract in this case is already an action. That's the end of the repetition of the review. That's it. I may want to reassess a priority. In this case, it's good enough. And I would move on and I will wait for the next repetition, in this case tomorrow. Then what is the futile review? Futile review is an example of insufficient work done. One action, zero memory. Because you have logged that repetition, but you didn't change the state in Supermemo. You haven't learned anything or unlearning, because sometimes it's about unlearning. Hey, something I learned turns out not to be true or not what I expected. So this actually counts as something being as an addition to your knowledge when you subtract false knowledge. Then, futile review is born in this mental scenario. You see a topic and think, I am not in the mood for this material now. Let's execute next repetition. As I mentioned, according to Piotr Wozniak, this is wrong. You must take action or you will loop this wasting time and learning little. It's a cardinal sin to execute processing operations without actually learning anything. Well, this is slightly extremist, but I get the point. This happens usually when I do subset. So imagine I do the subset here. And I sort by text size for the smallest. Sometimes it's, oh wow, not now, because I want it's like a shortcut for me to filter the extracts that are one repetition away or review away to make the closation and apply done, are already very atomic. Sometimes I'm lacking the knowledge that, I will need to check that and so on. Therefore, I just skip this. And because I don't do a subset, actually speaking, do this, I'll present a displayed sequence with Ctrl-Shift-L. That means that if it's not outstanding, I will still see it anyways. So what happens that I do this next week, and I will see this item again, this topic again. Every time I skip that, I do no repetition. I do the repetition, but I don't do any action. Therefore, it's one action, zero memory. It's one example of mine that I can. There are very few exceptions that I really do. And I do this overrule because of the flow. I am in a very specific mental zone, and I don't want any exception during that period of time. The cardinal sin. Then, when a topic arrives, you may have a dozen of excuses. I don't like this one, I'm not on the mood, I will do it tomorrow, I'm too sleepy now. By the way, that's why sometimes you can do like a preset subsets when it's late at night that are easier items or stuff like that. It will be too time consuming and so on. If you find yourself in a loop and consistently reschedule that same topic, or you don't reschedule it, you just press next, this will lock the repetition and send this to the future, the next rep. And the next rep, you apply. You do the same thing. You say, yeah, I have 4 repetitions, but it's like vanilla. I have done nothing yet. You are hurting the efficiency of learning. Yes, because you do more repetitions, but you have the same learning effect. Therefore, you are diluting the concentration of learning per repetition. Then, this is the same that could be spent on more productive steps. Nice. If you do not want incremental reading to become a waste of time, you must always take some action when you see a topic. By the way, this is topics, not items, even though we will see items as well. An example. If I see a sentence, you can delete it, or mark it as ignore, or extract it. Exactly. You may have seen, especially in Piotr Wozniak videos, that he does the extracts without reading. He says, I want to extract this, the rest I haven't read. Let me extract this and I will apply done. You haven't read it, but you have did an action. So strictly speaking, it's counting. You're making an action. You're performing, carrying on an action. Same thing if you delete a text, which I also do sometimes, that this is not useful. Boom, let me delete this text. I never use ignore. And now, if I do use ignore, I use it as highlighting. Like what James does, that, hey, I created this extract for this, that's the key. That was the reason I created the extract, something like that. Then, another thing you can do is that you can modify the priority. Usually will be sent to a very low or kind of low priority range. Nothing has changed. The content is the same, but the priority has been changed. You have taken an action. This already is following the principle. And could be that you modify the interval. Depending how you modify the interval, you will also be modifying the priority, by the way. Let me do it. This is scheduled for tomorrow. You know what? I need 100 days for this. Look now at the priority. It was 13. Now it's 65. So this means that you modify the priority consciously, explicitly as a user, even though you can do it the same implicitly. Then, in other words, either make tiny inroads into the text or mark it clearly as low priority or to be done later. Consider also delete or done. If you apply done, the contents will be gone, and it will stay a folder as long as there are children. If it's childless, applying done will have the same effect as delete. Nice. All of this so far is more or less for topics. Then specifically for items, the difference is that topics have a limited time span. Eventually, you will have read everything and converted all of the text to something you want to remember into flashcards, into items. For items, theoretically, this is never ending. So let's see what happens. Before that, let me export all of this, future review. Item perfectionism is another facet of the same problem. Is taking too many actions in a single piece of information. Highly inefficient to work with color, fonts, pictures, priorities, templates, images, and so on, in a single repetition. That also denotes how versed you are with Supermemo, or should I say incremental reading, when you do this. Because when you create the item, you know this item should be forever. So say, this has not that much priority, I will take this next time. I do a crazy low, close deletion, I will improve it incrementally. Not like, oh, I want the final stage already before I do the first repetition. Then those actions can be spread over time, incrementally. Naturally, setting the right priority is one of the most important steps. Yes. Should be the first. If you have to choose, you have different actions. One of those actions is to change priority. You should take this one first, unless you are overruling the entire principle to begin with. Perhaps a piece of information is not as important enough to ever squeeze through your crowded learning. Exactly. So you could perhaps create the element, the item, and you won't see it again. It will be pushed and pushed forever in the outstanding queue. But that's the optimal case. That means that you're leaving space for something that has more value. If so, you will save tons of time and not doing colors and styles. Even though I remember some of the Piotr Wozniak videos, he's still spending way too much time because he has created variations of templates. That is the same one, but the image component is slightly larger, even more larger to the other side, keeping the same color. Now the same thing, same combinations, but in a different background color. Bro, I know that the action is just one, applying the template, but you have to do a lot. You have to filter because you have more than 100 templates. And that's my key as well. My 2 cents. Don't spend time with colors and styles. Use as much as you can templates and rely on that. So when you apply the template, you don't need to move components and all of this thing. It's not worth it. Here, also you should remember, one memory, one action. Each time you review a piece of information, you're allowed to do an edit, font change, template change, category change. That would be concept, to set a different concept. Because Supermemo 16 didn't have concepts yet. However, unless you can do all of those actions in a single burst of machine gun keyboard strikes, or should I say auto-hotkey script, or unless some actions are associated with learning new things, you should rather limit your actions to a single step per single repetition. That's the key. That's the norm. I only take one action per single repetition. But I can overrule this. That, oh yeah, I'm learning something new, very associated, I need this very soon in order to read anything else. It's a prerequisite knowledge, it's an actual action critical knowledge, something like that. Then you will bypass this. Because you don't have to religiously follow this principle. Oh, well, he said now rule, I say this is a principle. One memory, one action rule demands that every operation in incremental reading or learning should leave a trace in your memory. So if the only thing I did is skip it, next, repetition, the only memory that I have is that I have done nothing. Yeah, that's not good, right? If I do this because I don't follow priorities well, I'm a noob, I am still not versed how to prioritize well, I don't want to see this, I just which I also did at the beginning. Then perhaps I did 100 repetitions or reviews, if our topics, but only 40 were meaningful. 60 of them I just skipped. That is what the principle is about. Your efficiency decreases. This principle, or rule, also says that one operation on a piece of data is better than 2 operations at the same time. Yes. And here I have one example. That's why I wanted to go meta. What have I done here? Before, if you remember, I modified the next interval. But I had a priority of 16%, now it's 65. but the 16 is lost. If I have taken different actions, then I only see the end result. I don't know what happened in between. If I only take one action, I will see that in every repetition, only something has changed. Or I could yeah, I think this is fishy, it doesn't look, it's a big jump, it was the first element, but I could just guess or speculate. I could not know for sure, because Supermemo is not logging this. So the more incremental, the better. But yeah, there are some side effects, consequences of going too incremental. Oh, so easy. Go as incremental as possible and that's it. No, that's not the answer necessarily. That's why you need experience and make this decision, subjective decision, every time. Every, shall I say, repetition. Then here says one repetition. Here is one example. Let me first extract this. Item perfectionism. Then I pasted this myself from the Wikipedia. I wanted to have the same, what's currently in the Wikipedia, because the image didn't load, and I have this in the component that is kind of tiny. Then imagine that I'm reading this article, I get to this section and I make this extract. From inflammation to the leukocytes. Nice. Then I want to create a close relation. Inflammation is produced, I will be this one. Exactly, here you go. So I make an extract out of this extract. Basically, this example is that you take one action at a time. So hey, now I have this. Well, I will make the close relation of leukotrienes or trines. And this is how it looks now. You could say, oh yeah, this is kind of lazy close relation. So first, I already adapted a little the text. I add the numbers, first and second. And then I make the close relation. So imagine, this pops. I'm doing something else. Next repetition. This appears. It's an extract I did in the past. Then what you want to remember in this case, it's the second part, leukotrienes. Then, this is how it looks with my layout, templates, and so on. Okay, that's the question and the answer. Now, let's say that I see this for the first time in this form, the flashcard form. Then I will take just one action. So in this case, I'm not familiar with this. I'm not even sure how this is pronounced in English. So I will be adding a hint. So now I see, when I reveal this, the answer is leukotrienes that this what they do is they attract white blood cells. Gotcha. And I delete it from here. Instead of having this hint on the question, on being primed, I will see it when I reveal the answer. And that's it. Then I will grade my recall. Let's simulate this. Okay, good. I remember that. Nice. And then, in this case, I will see this in 13 days from now. So let's imagine this shows up again. Inflammation is produced by eicosanoids and cytokines. Eicosanoids include first, prostaglandins, fever, vasodilation, and what? You know what? That inflammation, how inflammation is produced, it's a different memory. This item is not atomic. So I just delete the prelude, the introduction text. Inflammation. Eicosanoids include first this thing that causes this and that, and the second thing. And the second thing is what I want to recall. Leukotrienes. Good to know. So I have made one action in this case, in this repetition. It's still not done. Why? Because this it's information, redundant information here. But I won't do this now. I'm taking it incrementally. The knowledge formulation is incremental because I'm following one memory, one action. So the knowledge formulation is also incremental. Then, what was my mistake here because of the copy pasting? Prostaglandins, which produced fever and vasodilation. Then I get rid of this. Boom. So it's in the bare bones. Inflammation. Eikennotes include two things: prostaglandins and what else? T cells. That's it. So now I'm done. I could have done this in one single repetition. Yes, spending more time. But this is key because I'm having a memory recall each time. And it's genuine. Now I'm making this in sequence, but I will have 13 days, 1 month, a few months every time in between repetitions. So I have memory consolidation, forgetting, and all of that. Because I don't know today what will be the best formulation. If I follow incrementalism, it will be best. Because then I will know if I recall that, if I need less information, and so on. It could be the case that at some time, I no longer need this. I do no longer need this. I'm well aware of that, and this could be a different item, a different flashcard for this memory. Boom. And could be the case that I'm not familiar with this. Then, in this case, I will make a duplicate. And now, I ask for this, for the first one. Here you go. That's also an action. Could be that the action identified that I don't know the other one. So I create another element, another item for it to remember this. But I have done already 5 repetitions overall. Compare this from the beginning, having all of these questions, make it atomic, create perhaps the other element. Yeah, but the other element will have the same interval, will be very close, and so on. You will prefer incrementalism. I started with the example. So now let's see the theory. However, the 30 rules of knowledge formulation, which was written in the 1999, it's been a while, 25 years, for the classical Supermemo, still stands true. Incremental learning is incremental across the spectrum of rules and principles. In particular, formulating items and building understanding are incremental too. Just what I mentioned. It's not that you need several steps to reach to the item, to create the item. Once you have the item, you will create it's very likely you'll create a lazy close relation. Then that's not the final form. You will need also incrementalism. Before and after. It's always incremental. Everything is incremental. According to the one memory, one action principle, now it's a principle, not a rule. Piotr Wozniak is inconsistent with this. For me, it's a principle. The presented item will assume its final shape sometime in the undefined future. You don't know when it's going to happen. Could be the 4th repetition, the 5th, the 3rd. Never, because you're not going to see this item never again, because it's too low priority. That's not important. What's important is that the formulation is good enough for you that you know what you're being asked. It could be improved, but in order to be improved, you need to put on time to do the next repetition. If you don't do the next repetition, it will be stalled. Not a big deal, because your memory out of that item, this item represents a memory you want to remember, will also be stalled, like ignored in your life. It's precisely what you want. If you don't care enough about this, you want to forget it, to neglect it. And for whatever reason, you haven't seen this in 2 decades, and you still remember, for whatever reason, it's a win-win, because you haven't spent any time. Then, its final shape, sometime in the undefined future, or never, exactly as what I said. If its priority is not high enough. Yeah. It must be processed incrementally due to the following factors. There are just 2. Incremental build-up of comprehension, make the big picture, and incremental formulation that requires time. Now, perhaps because of artificial intelligence with language models, you could bypass this incrementalism and be a lot like 3 actions. Since I have the text, I can have the items created by the AI, next rep, or in the same repetition, if you will. I adapt to make it my own, because AI is limited, and that's about it. Then perhaps I will apply different template or add an image, something like that. But for formulation, I have skipped quite a few steps. Then, the 20 rules of formulation of knowledge say, do not memorize until you understand. Not exactly. It says, do not memorize before you understand. However, understanding is also an incremental process. Yeah, here we go. It's a non-linear process. Converting this item to plain what eicosanoids attract white blood cells might make sense only if the student fully understands and remembers the hierarchy of inflammation factors and involve eicosanoids. Exactly. I could create this flashcard today, being able to recall the answer in a split second, but not understanding this. But yeah, I'm aware that of this, but I cannot apply it. It's isolated knowledge. That's why it's so important incrementalism. You have to build the picture incrementally by following this flow. If that's not the case, carrying the context in the shape of these complex items is a form of transitional stage between a topic and an item. Such a good way to put it. It's too complex to be an item. It's like the middle ground. You have compacted the topic, you have extracted, you have condensed the information. But because you, in your case, you don't have the prerequisites, the required knowledge, and so on, you're getting there incrementally. For you, it doesn't provide the value as an item. This is regardless of how it is in the software. It's because of your previous knowledge. The item still asks a question vital for active recall. Absolutely. And you could recall this instantly as well. However, it also makes sure that the full context is provided until the rest of the knowledge structure is firmly established in the student's mind. That's why, if you remember, we had a hint in the answer field. In the answer, because I was not familiar enough. Once I see that that's a given. It's like noise for me. It's like saying, I have down. Yeah, the opposite of up. Come on, I already know that, right? So I no longer need this hint. The next repetition, I just remove it, and that's it. In incremental reading, the order of reading is often chaotic, is nonlinear. The understanding is incremental, and the effort to build a solid knowledge structure is gradual too, incremental. Everything is incremental. That's why it's the key. In order to fully understand incremental reading, you need to fully understand incrementalism, which you could apply in your life. You can apply incrementalism without ever touching Supermemo. How you do tasks, and well, I'm not going to expand on that. In addition to the incremental build-up of comprehension, extensive edits of items are costly, as in time and effort, especially the total rewire of the item to the plain question, which is kind of rule of thumb. To achieve a very simple and plain question and answer requires a lot of effort, and it's a lot harder. Because if I just do small edits, it will be still a very dense question, like this. This is very dense, and it's tough to answer this question like this. In fact, one of the main advantages of incremental reading is the minimum need for typing. That is the key. It's like a weird way to phrase it. That, I study, I take notes, then with the notes I make the flashcards, all of this. And I said to someone that, not me, I don't take notes. Because what I do is that I have the sources, and I edit from the source to make it my own. Convert this to what I need, or what I don't understand, or what I like, what I prefer, and then to convert it in a question and answer, or a closed deletion for the item, because I want to remember this. So this is prompting me to recall that from memory, instead of explaining that. I'm not making notes. I'm not taking notes. I'm just readapting what is already in the source, so the typing that I do is minimum. I don't type anything from scratch unless it's something that happens in real life. And I need to type it in. But most of the time, it's from a source, an article for someone else, even if it's a Twitter post, something more informal, or a Discord message or a Reddit post, not necessarily a book or something more formal. That's the key, because incremental reading, at the beginning, it's slower, because you're not building much understanding early stage, because it's non-linear, and it's focused on the long term. In the long term, it's the win-win. The fastest method to increase and retain your knowledge and learning is by incremental reading. Because you save tons of time, because you forget a lot less. You don't do relearning as much. You will still lapse cars, but just a tiny bit of your forgetting index. In the long term, it's the quickest. And not the quickest in time, it's also the cheapest in effort. This is why we use electronic sources in the first place. Yes, the paper is a bit possible. It's physical medium. You know the great limitations this has. Instead of just books that offer no disadvantage when the entire items are typed in anyway. Yeah. This is why it's so important efficiency principle in incremental reading, learning. To minimize edits by complying with one memory, one action principle. So the information, the items that you care a lot more, that have higher priority, you will see them sooner, because they will not be neglected in the outstanding queue or being postponed. It's likely you have more repetitions. It's likely you reformulate them more, because this rule applies to everything, but not at the same degree, because not everything is as important. And it's also some other principles or skills you need to assess how important is this piece of information for me, how this connects to what I learned, I know already. Many other skills that if you have only been in the school system, it's very likely you have no clue. You're very green on that. That's why it may sound like it's so hard to do incremental reading. Let me tell you it's not. What's hard is to undo what you have learned in the school system. I'm not going to expand on that. So that is one memory, one action. I fully suggest to watch one related video about thoughts on extracting. How you extract. You keep reading, once you extract all of that, it goes in consonance with this principle. And I could say that most of the Supermemo users will not follow this principle that strictly, that often. Let me know if that was clear enough, if I added my 2 cents, I added some value from the source, and see you incrementally.